So listen, let's just start with the obvious. We observe Donald Trump sniffing. We observe slurring. We observe over the weekend what is almost the somnambulant Trump, seeming barely awake in some cases. We see sometimes the sort of verbal glitches that coincide with a sort of a shoulder spasm. Are these things connected potentially? What do you see? What are the relevant and irrelevant behaviors that you observe?
Everything that you described makes it very clear to me that he needs to have an MRI of his brain. He needs to be evaluated psychiatrically and neurologically as soon as we can, because everything else is roughly conjecture. There are certain things that are troublesome and somewhat potentially obvious to a psychiatrist, which is that he seems to have the signs of an early frontotemporal dementia, where people do actually sniff between while talking, and they do certainly slur speech. And it's something that happens to people. It shouldn't happen, but it does happen to people in their early 70s, even late 60s. And he's got a family history of the father who had Alzheimer's disease. So there really is a family history of some kind of cerebral issue. If you look at his behavior when he's giving speeches, he has problems word finding. He slurs his speech sometimes. He mispronounces words and then sort of shakes it off like this and then gets back on track. He has a lot of trouble in early stages of what one would call dementia. And that's what I would call it. That's what I will call it. I think that it's very disturbing in that nobody seems to talk about it except people like yourself.
And from developing an internet, this is so
authority and authoritarian. Authority and authoritarian.
I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation, the beginnings of that investigation, the oranges of the.
She shouldn't treat the United States that way by saying, what an absurd. She said, absurd. That's not the right word to use. Absurd.
The members of our armed forces, and you understand that very well. Of our armed forces, all applicable state taxes as well. Despite these obstacles, Karen. Terrorist Qasem Soleimani. Terrorist. Your campaign of terror, murder, mayhem will not be tolerated any longer. Tolerated. Democrats decided to shield and shelter criminal. Look, wait. You have criminals.
All right, we're watching the
shelter criminal. Shelter criminal.
A beautiful look. You remember this? Do you remember a beautiful look?
California passed an outrageous law declaring their whole state to be a sanctuary for criminal. He directed the December assault.
So they don't have to go back to the evil banker and borrow money from the banker. Evil banker and borrow money.